Well, yeah, how's life going? Well, life's not going too bad, I suppose. Finished my radiotherapy now. Just trying to get myself back on my feet. Um, Martin, all my love to your mum. Hope she gets better. Thinking about you, brother. Um, been on a couple of hangouts and made a few comments, and yeah, and then on both hangouts I got blocked. I think this is a globalist site, and I brought up the Aries experiment, the Aries failure experiment, about the experiment that was done back in the 1850s by George Aries, using a telescope filled with water to observe the light travelling through the ether, the starlight, into the telescope, and how it passed down through the telescope. And it's a very interesting experiment, and as much as he tried in his results, proved to himself and everybody else that really wanted to pay any attention that there was no, it was actually the starlight was rotating above us, and the microscope was stationary, and they proved this. This experiment is called Aries failure experiment, which was brought to my attention by Nathan Oakley and the Globebusters, and you know, there are certain things. I mean, the biggest one on the biggest argument in the flat earth, the globalists, I suppose, is the sun sets. Well, there are many different hypotheses out there to say what it is and how it operates. But when you see things like the Bedford level experiments and the things like the Aries experiments, the gyroscopic experiments, and then also, you know, the inconsistency on the maps that are available to us at this time, you know, the inconsistency on the sizes of the continents, it all pushes that, you know, pushes us towards, well, something's not quite right, and that's where the flat Earth sort of movement takes over when we start to do these experiments, because some of these experiments are very simple experiments that we can repeat. And like the Aries experiment, that would be an interesting one to try and replicate. It's a fairly straightforward experiment. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination by any type of astronomer, but I'm sure there are those out there that could replicate this experiment quite easily without too much trouble. And even though Wikipedia said that Aries, there was no definite conclusion, the conclusions were negative, it was because they weren't 100%, but in fact the scales tipped extremely, very favourably in the fact that it proved that there was no spin to our, so say, global Earth, you know. So that's a very interesting one. So yeah, I suppose the debate goes on, and I think the debate will continue to go on and on and on. The more people that come into it, the more people that start to question, you know, the current sort of educated model that we all are sold down the pipeline. Only time will tell, and we will see. You know, I believe that we're all looking for the truth. We want to know whether the system, the people that control our education, they're lying to us just to keep us enslaved, because they don't want us to all have a fair piece of the cake. and that's pretty much how I've viewed society for a long time. You know, it does seem to be very much a life of those that have and those that have not. And well, I believe that the internet, the YouTube and all that is slowly but surely creating a picture, you know, of how the world really works. And yeah, it's very interesting. I hope the debates continue, and I hope we continue to expand the, you know, just people's, just getting them to have a look at it. So what I found out with the globalists on the globalist sites is that it's all, well, this is the way it is, and there's no middle ground. Whereas for me, you know, yeah, if there's something that I can't explain away, then the hardest point of the physics or science that you can't explain away is the one obviously you've got to go and look the closest at. Either way. And because once upon a time, back in the day, probably a bit like the rest of you, I loved the whole thing about NASA and the alien conspiracies and the chance that we might travel to different planets and different realms, and that there was, you know, an infinite amount of inhabitable planets out there spinning around, an infinite amount of stars and an infinite amount of galaxies, you know, in this great universe of ours. Yeah, sure, I'd like to believe that. Going against all that I believed in is the hardest thing to do. You know, I try to say, well, am I impartial? How can you be impartial? We are acquisitive, and it's our natural instinct to question things, you know. And I think that there's a part of, that's about the only part of evolution that I do believe in is these learning of techniques that are passed on through experiences, through your connection with your siblings and your parents. Yeah. Well, there we go. That'll do. We'll carry this on anyway. Hello, everyone out there. Hope everybody's well. My thoughts and prayers go with Martin and his mum. Be good. God bless.